Hello everyone, welcome back. My name is Gia J and this is my channel, The Blue Jay. So as many of you know, the other day I finished the fourth book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen, House of Chains. A book that I really enjoyed. It was amazing. And I dived straight into the fifth book, Midnight Tides. And so I was reading the first prologue and the first couple of chapters, and I put the book down and I said to myself, I really need to record my reaction and kind of my initial impressions to each and every one of these pages, because I feel like Midnight Tides is going to be such a wonderful journey that I wanted to share all of these pages with all of you. And I feel like doing a single review at the end of the book would not give the book justice, because I feel like there's so many things that I want to touch upon, so many details and quotes. I'm still unsure whether I'm gonna do a review of every chapter, or I'm gonna do a kind of review at the end of each one of the books inside Midnight Tides. So tell me which option you guys would prefer. But yeah, so today we're gonna review the prologue of Midnight Tides. So let's dive straight into today's review. First of all, can we all spare a minute to appreciate the wonderful Midnight Tides cover? This has to be one of my favorite Malazan covers, because I'm not sure if we have visited any rainforests or jungles yet in Malazan, but I mean, we visited deserts, we visited cities, islands, kind of Genebakis, but we haven't really gone into any jungle settings. I think I might be wrong. I don't know who these soldiers are. My guess is that they're probably Tiste or Leathery Legions, or even Malazan soldiers, actually. I don't know. And there's this really big dragon skeleton in the floor. It's one of the reasons why I love this cover so much, because I love dragons. But that's, I think, a really cool cover. And there's these like bones scattered in the floor. I think human bones, actually. Yeah. And I think that's really nice. And there's this white bird here also. I think it has to be my favorite Malazan cover for sure. I just wanted to give it a minute because it's really cool. And so the prologue, scene 1. So in the first scene, I'm not entirely sure when this is set, because I know Midnight Tides in general, like the whole book, is set at the beginning of Gardens of the Moon. I think more or less at the beginning, or a bit before the beginning of Gardens of the Moon. But this prologue, it says that it's the first days of the Sundering of Emurlan, which is the Warren of Shadow. And I think this really takes us back to House of Chains, when we got to visit some of the fragments of Shadow. So my guess is that this book will provide some kind of explanation or answer as to why the Warren was shattered. That's my guess. And then we see that there is some type of Edur invasion, with both Edur and Tiste Andi legions who have defeated the Kachain Shamale. And what I really love about this prologue is the imagery of the sky. I think it really sets the tone really well and adds such an epic scale to the whole battle. I mean, I'm gonna read one of my favorite quotes from the prologue, because I think it really shows how amazing this scene is. From the twisting, smoke-filled clouds, blood rained down. The last of the sky keeps, flame-wreathed and pouring black smoke, had surrendered the sky. And what I really enjoy about this is that we've seen some of these sky keeps before. For example, Moonspawn at the beginning of Gardens of the Moon, in the Siege of Pale. And we saw how the Malazan Empire was trying to destroy it with high mages, with so much magic and everything. And even though Moonspawn was damaged, it wasn't fully destroyed, showing how powerful these skykeeps are. And the fact that in this prologue there's just so many of these skykeeps falling from the sky, the clouds are red with blood from the Kachain Shamale, really sets the tone really well, I think. And it also shows how powerful Tiste Andi and the Tiste Edur legions are. So I really like that. Another of these quotes is that it says, like a dagger, the Edur legions had driven to the army's heart. Again, it really shows, I mean, if we compare, for example, the Kachain Shamale in Memories of Ice, who we saw they are incredibly powerful. Even 3 or 4 of these creatures can kill hundreds of humans. And then on the other hand, we saw in House of Chains how even though the Tiste Edur were to some extent powerful, they were not the most powerful of races, I would say. That's my opinion. But we didn't see any really big battle scenes with Tiste Edur fighting or anything like that. Like, we didn't see much skill or much power, I would say. And the fact that these Edur legions have destroyed most of the K'chain Shemala really makes me think that probably or maybe the Tiste Edur were more powerful before, I would say. That's my guess, but I'm not entirely sure. And one of the other reasons why I love this prologue so much is that I think Erikson is a master at writing aftermath. Even though we haven't really seen the battle, we haven't seen any battle scenes in this prologue, we just see the aftermath. It makes us really think what has happened, like why what has happened to make all of these K'chain Shemala so powerless and like destroyed, and it makes us feel with intrigue. And even though I haven't really seen the action, I feel very satisfied as a reader. So that's what I really love. And then we meet two really interesting characters who are Skabandari Bloodeye, who is the head of the Edur, which is a really, really cool name. The fact that he's called Bloodeye because of the blood that stains his vision, I think Erikson is so good at writing good names. And then we also meet Silkas Ruin, who is the head of the Andi, and both of them are draconian shapeshifters. So are they on the same level as Anomandarake? Because Anomandarake is also a draconian shapeshifter, I think, right? So I guess they're all of them in the same kind of level. That's my guess. And then we see by their descriptions that one is much more damaged than the other, with Skabandari not having suffered as many losses as Ruin with his Andi legions. For example, Ruin has both of his weapons being destroyed completely. So my guess is that Skabandari was late in the aid on purpose, and he probably did that on purpose in order to not suffer as many losses as the Andi. That's my guess. My question in this chapter is that it says that they have been able to enter some type of new world where there are already some Tiste Andi. So my guess is that they have come from their warrens or from another place, and they have come to the kind of human Malazan world, even though I don't think the Malazan Empire is yet established, I think. And the Tiste Andi that are already in this world are Anomandarake with his Andi in Moonspawn. That's my guess. And also my guess is that I have many guesses in this in this prologue, but most of them are probably going to be wrong. But this is what I love about these books, and is that I just start thinking of many assumptions and things that I think will happen, and most of them don't end up happening, but at least I tried. And I think that Anomandarake probably killed some of these K'chain Shemala in these skykeeps, and then settled his Tiste Andi in one of these skykeeps instead of destroying it. That's my guess. And so then we see that Skabandari is celebrating that they hold the gate to this new world. Again, I'm lost as to what this gate is. I'm not sure if this is some type of warring gate. I'm not sure if this is kind of like kind of the Dead House gates, a similar gate. I don't know. And then we see that all of the K'chain Shemala are destroyed except for the ones in a place called Morn. And then that really rings a bell to us. And this is what I love about this prologue, and it's that even though the setting and even though the time of this prologue is completely different to anything we've seen before, we're very disorientated in that sense, but there are so many elements of this prologue that we already know, that Erikson has been kind of introducing to us in the previous books. For example, we know so many things about the K'chain Shemala from Memories of Ice. We know a lot of things from the Edur, from House of Chains, from the Tiste Andi, from the first and the third book. We know about these skykeeps. We saw some of them also at the ending of House of Chains. We've seen how these Asath houses kind of work. I'm still very unsure about them, but yeah. So there's many elements of this that we already know, and it really makes me feel that I'm finally being able to grasp where the story is going in some sense. So that's what I really enjoy about it. And then Skabandari says that no race will stand against him and his Tista Edur. That he says that the Jagut are too scattered, he says that the Imas are too primitive, and he's very indifferent about the Fukhrul Asail. And then my question is Skabandari a fool, or is he incredibly powerful? Because the fact that he's underestimating some of the most powerful races out there makes me think that he's probably a bit of a fool. I don't know, but that's what I love about him also. So yeah. Also, another of the quotes that I really makes me feel reattached to the Tista Andi is that it says, scattered here and there, midnight banners of Tista Andi. Again, midnight. I don't know if that's a mention to midnight times, maybe. But the fact that, for example, in the first book and in the third book, especially in the third book, we established deep links with the Tista Andi. We fought with them in battle against the Paniondomin, and then I really enjoy them. I think it's one of my favorite races. And the fact that there's only 1,000 of them left really, really touched me. I think that's really made me feel sorry for them. Whereas the Edur from House of Chains, we generally dislike. So the fact that there's more Edur legions left than Andi ones, it really makes us feel a bit sorry for them. My another question, I have many questions in this prologue. There's a mention of a warren that I think we haven't yet seen. Its name is Starvald de Merlijn. I'm not sure if we've seen it. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to know what this is, but if you guys can help me understand if I'm supposed to know it or not, because I was a bit unsure about it. I'm not sure if you guys have seen the movie Alien versus Predator. It's a series of movies about kind of alien creatures, and there's a lot of battle scenes, and it's a really... I saw it when I was little, and I was very afraid of that movie, but I loved it because I'm a fan of horror movies. And it really reminded me of this quote. Jumbled mountains of Kachain Shemale carcasses marked the last stand of one of the matrons. I don't know why these Kachain Shemale remind me so much of these kind of predators in the film, but the fact that there's this huge pile of these bodies who we know are incredibly powerful, and this really big matron on top of them completely destroyed, it really sets the tone again really well, I think. And another quote that I really love is that it says, Kurald Emurlan had slaughtered the defenders, with the defenders being the Kachain Shemale. And I think Erickson here used both words, slaughtered and defenders, really well. Because although in Memories of Ice we saw the Kachain Shemale as kind of enemies, here the fact that it says that the Edur used their warren to slaughter, which is kind of a aggressive verb which puts the Edur at a kind of distance, while the fact that they call the Kachain Shemale as defenders makes us feel so much pity for them, like it's kind of their home and they're trying to save them, like naturally as an instinct, and they've been killed for defending their own home. So we feel a lot of pity for them, I think. One other thing is that there's a mention of Skabandari's cape. It says, hanging from his shoulders a sealed cape, the hide of a matron, fresh enough to still glisten with natural oils. Again, really, really cool cape, I think. And also, if the Kachain Shemale are incredibly powerful, I can't imagine how powerful a matron must be. And the fact that he has one of these matrons hanging from his back, again, shows how powerful Skabandari probably is. And then it says that it is the shattering of the Emurlan Warren is because of the rivening of Skabandari's hand. So my guess is that it's Skabandari's fault. I'm curious to know what he did in order to shatter the fragment, and know more about why he did it and everything. But I mean, given how powerful he is, I can understand why he destroyed, he shattered the warren, because he seems quite evil at the same time. And from the moment when I read the quote, the adored legions had reformed into a rough ring around the last surviving Andy, I said, oh my god, something is really, really going wrong. Because this kind of predatory formation encircling their prey really gives us a kind of an idea of what is going to happen in a couple of lines, because this predatory formation makes us think that they are kind of gonna kill the Andy, and then the betrayal comes. Even though I knew it was probably gonna come, I was still very, very hurt for Ruin and his Andy. And then Skabandari stabs him, and they adore slaughter the Andy. Again, it mentions the word slaughter again. And even though I was seeing it coming, I really, really wasn't prepared. For once, I can kind of anticipate on what's going to come in the Malazan books, and then again, I feel really, really kind of hurt in my inside. And then my favorite quote for sure, that I have many quotes that are my favorite ones, but this has to be my favorite one. And it says, one must rule, two cannot. You know the truth of that. Big as this world is, sooner or later there would be war between us, and so it must be one people, one ruler. And I think this really is a lesson about humanity that really Erikson is trying to put forward, I think. Even though, for example, in our world, in the human world, there are so many continents, and there is so much territory and space for all of us, and many resources like food and water and life and, you know, beauty in general, I think we humans tend to subjugate the less powerful ones for domination. We're always trying to be the most powerful ones, because we are, I think, dominant creatures, but that's kind of an instinct that is, even though I think it's an instinct in all of us, I don't know why humans we do this all the time. And we also see it, for example, with the Malazan Empire, trying to dominate other cities, for example, Darujistan. So I think with this quote, Erikson was really mirroring humanity in general, and the fact that two cannot rule, because one must rule in the end. So I really love that quote, I have to say. And then we see at the end of this scene how Skabandari takes Ruin to an Asath. My question is, will Silkas Ruin meet Paran in the future? Because he's probably going to be around still by the time the next books come. So I think he'll probably meet him. I loved the mention of Andarist, because it really takes me back to House of Chains. So I really, really enjoyed seeing him come up again. And then we see that Skabandari plans to hunt down the Andy who are already in this world, because he thinks there are no champions. And all of us in our heads are thinking, Anomander Rake, because he's Anomander Rake. So I really hope there's some type of clash between both. I think Anomander Rake will probably not come up in this book, because I've read that this book kind of deviates completely with all of the characters except Trul Sengar. So I'm not expecting him to appear in this book, but I'm really excited to know more of what will happen in the future. And yeah, so this scene was really, really intense, I would say. And then going on to the second scene, it says that Gothos is joined by Mael, who is cleansing the mess the battle has made. And they are in a glacial burn north. Again, I think this is a really, really cool setting. I love glaciers. I'm a big fan of ice. Everything that has to do with ice, I love. I really hope we can see more of these glaciers in the future, because I really, really enjoy them. That's one of the reasons why I love Jagut so much, because they use a warren of ice. So yeah. My question is, with the cleansing, does he mean that he's kind of cleaning the massive scale of destruction that has occurred in front of them? Or is cleansing something else here? I'm not really sure about that. Another thing that I think I know, I'm supposed to know, but I'm not entirely sure if I know, is that Gothos, I know we've met him before, because that name really rings a bell in my head. Probably in Memories of Ice, maybe? I'm not really sure. But if someone could kind of explain why I'm supposed to know this character, because his name really rings a bell and it's really familiar, but I can't grasp from where, really. And then Mael really reminded me of Malik Rel, because we know that Malik Rel is a Mael priest. And Mael, I guess, is the god of the seas, because he mentioned something about flooding. But I didn't know he was an elder god up until now, actually. I thought he was like a normal god. And then Gothos tells him Skabandari is bringing Silkas Ruin to the Asath. I really enjoyed one of the quotes that says the two dragons were now one, and then Gothos thinks to himself, typical. Again, I think this really mirrors the nature of these races. He thinks obviously these two races had to destroy themselves in order for one to remain, and he thinks it's something obvious that was supposed to happen. He was expecting that to happen, and I think in this prologue, Erikson really plays with that dilemma of preservation versus destruction. Should one destroy the other in order to achieve maximum kind of dominance in the world, or should you coexist with the other and share the resources and share everything that exists in this world? So I think with these with Gothos' thoughts, I think Erikson is really kind of mirroring that dilemma, similar to other dilemmas like compassion versus indifference in previous books. And then where we read that Mael thinks it is premature of Skabandari to think that there is no opposition to him. And then with this, he is really mirroring our own thoughts as readers, because we all are in our heads thinking that Skabandari is a fool, that he's really being stupid by underestimating some of these powerful players in the books. So we can all really agree with him. And then Mael asks Gothos to preserve rather than destroy this, and says in exchange for that he'll owe him. Again, this idea of preservation versus destruction comes into play again here, I think. And I think this is just a wonderful dilemma. It makes me really think, are we humans and any other of these races mentioned in the Malazan Book of the Fallen, do we have an instinct and do we have an urge to destroy the others? Or are we supposed to coexist with other people? I mean, obviously we all know the answer, that we would prefer to coexist just to avoid war, but it really makes you think of this dilemma, I think. And then he warns that Mael and Kilamandaros, I'm not entirely sure who this Kilamandaros is. I'm supposed to know him because I've seen this name before, but again, I've completely forgotten. There are so many characters in this series that I'm just a bit overwhelmed by the amount of names. And he says that they should take Skabandari down quickly before Anomander Rake comes into play. Every time I see Anomander Rake being mentioned or described in any page, in any book in this series, I'm just like, my heart starts to go so much faster. Like, I don't know why this name has such a powerful effect on the reader, and I think by seeing so many of people's reactions to the Malazan Book of the Fallen, I've seen that many people agree with this. Anomander Rake is a really cool character, and I really hope we can see more of him, because up until now we haven't really seen much of him. So I really hope he comes back soon. And then Mael says Ozark, who we have met before, I think, because I saw him being mentioned in House of Chains, I believe, is already moving to stand in Rake's path again. So again, this scene really makes us have many questions in our head. And in the third and final scene of this amazing prologue, we travel forwards in time to the year 1159 of Burn Sleep, which is really familiar because we've seen before a mentioning of these years of Burn Sleep. So I guess this is kind of the present time, or at least the beginning more or less of Gardens of the Moon. And there's also mention of 3 years before the leathery seventh closure. I know one of the civilizations from the main book is the leathery, so this rings a bell also. It's sometimes so difficult in these books to follow the different time spans because we're traveling forwards and backwards in time 1,000 years, or I don't know, it's really difficult. And also between the different books, some of them come before, some of them come after, so it's a bit difficult, but I'm finally getting there, I feel. And there's also so many points of view, like so many other series have within every chapter there's only one point of view, and between chapters they change. But in this series, every chapter has like different points of view in it. For example, in this prologue, there's only like 6 or 7 pages, but it has like 3 points of view. So yeah, just to give you a magnitude of the scale of this series. And then we see at the beginning of this scene that there's a sword maker called Withal, I don't know, and he comes from a city named Mekros. And he wakes up on a strange beach that is filled with bodies and the wreckage of a floating city that has been destroyed by mountains of ice rising from underneath it. And I guess this is Gothos doing, I think, because whenever I see ice in this series, I immediately think of Jagut, and we saw Gothos in the previous chapter. And I enjoyed the simile that it says, breaking the city apart as if it were a raft of sticks. And this just really shows the immense power of Gothos and Jagut in general. Like the fact that he destroyed a whole city, even though it was a floating city, it's a city with like 20,000 people, I think they said. And the fact that he simply destroyed them like a raft of sticks really shows the epic scale of Jagut's power. Again, we see that there's an aftermath of events. We haven't really seen the actual destruction of the city. We didn't see any action, but there's this element of intrigue with the aftermath that I really, really enjoy. With any other writer, I think it would seem very lackluster. Like, why didn't you give me the actual destruction scene, the actual battle? But with Erikson, there's this element of tension that I enjoy so much. And then 3 Bokharal arrive and tell him to follow. When I read this, I don't know why I thought of Iskarol Pust, because every time I see Bokharal, I think of him. So I thought at the beginning that he was gonna pop up, but I really don't think so. And I love the description and the imagery created of this grassy kind of rainforest or jungle, I think, more or less, no? With the quote that says, "Those grasses were like nothing he had seen before, long tubular triangles, razor-edged, as he discovered once he passed through them when he found his low legs crisscrossed with cuts." And I think I really enjoy these settings that are so different between each other. And then he says that in the distance stood a lone tent. And then that immediately I went, oh, tent, crippled god. And that really reminded me of the beginning of Memories of Ice with the crippled god in his tent when he sees, for example, Quickben. And then, so that really rang a bell, and I immediately said, okay, crippled god. I don't know if he is actually the crippled god, but I'm pretty sure he is. And then something that I enjoyed so much about this scene is the different quotes that Erikson placed to make us feel sorry for the crippled god. He says, "The smoke, it eases my pain." Then he also says, "Conjured from memories of my home." And then he finally says, "The agony of my broken body." We feel so sorry for him. I was literally feeling so much pity for the crippled god, and I think Erikson has such a good ability, and he has an immense talent to do this with the most evil characters, the characters that we despise the most, we make us feel sorry for them. We saw it before in the previous scene with the Kachain Shamala. Even though we hated them, we saw them as evil creatures, we had this element of feeling sorry for them. And again, I feel sorry again for the crippled god here, so I applaud Steven Erikson for this. He finds the humanity even in the most evil characters. And I appreciate that, because I hate series that are just black and white characters. These grey characters, that's humanity in general, that's the actual world. So that's what I really enjoy. The fact that the crippled god probably had a family, had a home, and he's suffering through so much pain, is something that I feel sorry for him. So yeah. And he says also that they are nowhere in the heart of nowhere, a fragment prone to wander. Then every time I see a mention of a fragment, I go back to the fragment of Shadow, of the Shattered Warren. So are they now in the Shattered Warren, in kind of a fragment? I don't know. That's a question that I have. I'm also really curious to see more of these Nachts, these Bokral-like creatures. We've never seen them before, right? I think. But the fact that they're created by Jagut, I didn't know that Jagut, for example, or any other of these races could create other creatures. I didn't know that, so this was good to know. And then the god tells him that he saved the Withal, and he has prepared a place for him to make a sword. And once he does this, the god will free him. But he says that for now he is his slave. And another quote that I enjoyed is, "You are my slave and I am your master." The Mekros own slaves, yes. Hopeless souls stolen from island villages and such on your raids. The notion is therefore familiar to you. And I think this really shows such the hypocritical nature of humans. We believe we can do anything like slavery or any other evil kind of thing without actually being affected by it. We begin to realize that there's like a cruelty to our action when someone else does them to us. And so we can, in the end, come to understand that some of the most horrible things that we do for our economy or for politics or any other thing are actually really evil. And so I think Withal is now realizing how such a thing like slavery, like is common in his own world, is actually such a evil thing. I'm really curious to know what kind of sword he is supposed to make. Because the first thing that came to mind was Dragnipor, but I think that can't be, because I think Draconis was the one who did that. Have we seen any other mentions of any other powerful swords? Because I can't actually remember any other swords. But this prologue left me with so many questions, but it was a really good way to start. Some general thoughts is that I loved this prologue. I think with only 3 scenes, the tone was set so incredibly well. It made me so curious to keep on reading. There were so many elements mentioned that were so familiar, but at the same really distant from our thoughts. Like I had no idea where this glacier was, for example, or where the battle took place, or what this gate was. But I want to know more of what Skabandari did to shatter the Warren of Shadow. This prologue had everything. I mean, it had dragons, it had an aftermath, it had the sky keeps crushing down from the sky, and an unexpected betrayal. We had a Jagut destruction. We also had the crippled god. I mean, many things. I mean, I think this has to be the definition of epic. And I can't wait to continue in this journey. So thank you guys for watching today's video. I really appreciate if you can subscribe or like this video or comment if you want to start the conversation. I'm more than happy, and I'll see you in the next video.